Good evening and welcome to this special edition in our extended coverage of the escalation between Israel and Hamas. Today it was the ceasefire that never was. Just this hour, a barrage of fire and at least 2 rockets intercepted over Tel Aviv, with one Israeli critically wounded from rocket fire near the Gaza border. Late Monday evening, optimism rose with news of an Egyptian proposal for a truce to begin at 9 a.m. local time. After a meeting of the Israeli Security Cabinet this morning, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced his country would accept the ceasefire, at which point the IDF notified it was holding all fire. But optimism didn't last long. A steady stream of rocket fire from Hamas in the Gaza Strip continued across Israel. From Ashdod in the south, where a house suffered a direct hit, to the center, where 4 rockets were intercepted, to Haifa, some 160 kilometers north of the Strip. And later, Israel announced it was renewing strikes on the Gaza Strip and hit 30 targets, including rocket launchers, terror tunnels, and a weapons storage facility. And joining me right now in the studio is Arab Affairs analyst Yoav Stern. Good evening, Yoav. Good evening. How can we explain this current escalation, just this current last 2 hours that was deteriorating each and every minute here in Israel?
Yeah. Well, Hamas announced this morning that they will not accept the ceasefire and they will not be committed to what was agreed upon or announced in Cairo without their consent. This is the reason why we saw throughout the day and in the last hour more rockets fired at Israel as it was in the last days. I think what we're going to see is more of what we had. We're going to see more rockets fired in Israel. Hamas says it has more surprises for Israel. This is, I don't know, I mean, if they usually
call it as a surprise.
Yeah, well, I don't know what they call as a surprise. I don't know if they commit, they can execute any surprises now. But definitely the people of Gaza are the people who are suffering really from what Hamas is doing. I think it was a clever decision from the government of Israel to accept this ceasefire, and I think that the fact that Hamas did not accept it is a mistake on their side.
Why Hamas is not accepting it? Hamas is so angry at Egypt, so angry at this current ceasefire, so angry at the agreement that they cannot stop. Because yesterday when we heard Ismail Haniyeh with his speech, you know, the subtext of the speech was, you know what, in a way we lost, but we are not going to show this to the world. Today it seems totally different.
Yeah, so a few points. You have raised a few points and I will address some of it. First of all, what the Egyptians announced was not accepted on Hamas previously. I don't know if Israel was involved in putting together those this agreement or this announcement, actually, but Hamas was definitely not involved in this. It came as a surprise. It came through the media, through the Egyptian media first, and then Hamas had to decide what to do. This announcement does not give Hamas any clear asset that they can be proud of. Actually, if we look at it closely, Hamas...
It is a big loss to Hamas, what just happened in the last 7 days.
Definitely a big loss to Hamas. If we go back 7 days, it seems like a long time ago. But if we go back 7 days ago, we would remember that they started this operation because there were 400 Hamas people abducted in the West Bank. And they're still in jail. Nobody talks about them anymore. They're not part of the equation anymore. They're not going to be released by Israel anymore. And what did Hamas achieve? Hamas achieved more destruction of houses, demolition of houses.
So we're talking about people who were arrested, and also the salary issue, the salaries that were not paid by Mahmoud Abbas.
Salaries and economic issues is definitely a very important issue for Hamas. Actually, Hamas doesn't have right now any resources that it can rely on. Iran is supporting Hamas. It's not clear that they are giving them the money or the resources needed for them anymore. Qatar is interested in giving them. But the big change in the last year is Egypt. Egypt has declared the Ikhwan Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, a terror organization. Hamas is very close to the Muslim Brotherhood, and therefore Egypt sees Hamas as a terror organization on its own border. Actually, Hamas is still controlling the Gaza Strip. This is a threat to what the Egyptians call their security.
You know, Yoav, before I will ask you, I would just want to look, and we want to look at what happened today in the diplomatic arena. Before we're going to this VDR, I just want to put a question, and then you will answer it. If maybe there's something under the table or something happened in the last 24 hours, some kind of a support that Hamas got that we don't know about, just let's leave this question with a question mark, and let's go to see what happened today in the political arena. Israel's security cabinet voted this morning to accept the Egyptian ceasefire proposal, but not everyone in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's ruling coalition was happy with the decision. I-24 News correspondent Shai Ben Ari has the details.
Thank you, gentlemen.
A case of back and forth. A fragile hope of an impending ceasefire all but evaporated Tuesday afternoon as the Israeli Air Force renewed its strikes on the Gaza Strip after Hamas continued to fire rockets at Israeli cities all morning. This even after Israel announced its acceptance of ceasefire terms presented by Egypt. The hope in Israel lasted several hours, but at no point did Hamas signal its acceptance of the terms. Members of its military wing even called the Egyptian proposal a, quote, total surrender. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was quickly forced to return to a tough public stance.
If Hamas rejects the Egyptian proposal and the rocket fire from Gaza does not cease, and that appears to be the case now, we are prepared to continue and intensify our operation to protect our people.
Not to be outdone, Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman made clear what he thinks Israel's next step should be.
We have to demand from the entire world. You pressured us to retreat from the Gaza Strip, and now we need your backing to go all the way. And when I say all the way, it's not to hit them hard. We don't need to hit them hard. We don't need to respond. We need to lead and to end this operation when the IDF has full control of the Gaza Strip.
Indeed, Lieberman is eager to position himself to the right of Netanyahu for political reasons. He's not the only one. Netanyahu's initial acceptance of the ceasefire exposed him to criticism, even from within his own party. It remains to be seen if all hope of a ceasefire anytime soon has disappeared. By Tuesday evening, Operation Protective Edge was back to full force. For now, all talk of a ceasefire has been put aside.
Yes, Yoav, we left the viewers with a question mark about something happened. Did something happen in the last 24 hours, except the speech of Ismail Haniyeh that gave the military wing of Hamas another push forward? Because it seems today that they are more eager to fire than any other day of the last 7 days.
Yeah, I think what happened is that they are eager to say to everyone, and especially to the Egyptians. The Egyptians is their source of concern. They are eager to say, to tell them, we are not going to surrender, and what you have suggested to us is a surrender, and we're not going to do that. We're not going to surrender without even someone consulting us. Basically, they're saying we need a go-between, someone who will meddle in this issue, and I'm not sure that we know who is able to do that other than the Egyptians right now. I think that the diplomatic ability of the Egyptians is irreplaceable at this point, especially, I mean, when we talk about the Gaza Strip and Hamas. And therefore, Israel will only, as I see it, will only allow any communication with Hamas. It will have to be through Egypt and not through other players in the region. This is very inconvenient for Hamas people.
Yes, definitely. This is very inconvenient for Hamas people, and we will just talk about how inconvenient is it to President Mahmoud Abbas, this current situation, not only to the Hamas. Let's move on the telephone. With us is our I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, Tal Shalev. Good evening, Tal.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Tal, what do we know about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, about his reaction for the last escalation?
Well, it has definitely been a difficult, intense day for the Israeli Prime Minister. At around 9 o'clock, he will convene the Special Security Cabinet for a second meeting today. The morning opened with a 2-hour meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning debating the ceasefire. He succeeded to pass the ceasefire proposal and to accept it in the name of the cabinet. But of course, after 6 hours, the ceasefire broke, and Netanyahu ordered, we might say, with a lot of rage, the IDF to continue the operation and expand the operation. So tonight at the cabinet meeting, they will debate the ongoing plans. And earlier today, we heard the foreign minister, Victor Lieberman, calling to reconquer Gaza. And against the backdrop of a lot of political pressure Netanyahu has been under in the past 24 hours, we can definitely expect this cabinet meeting to be very, very tense. And we might have a statement from him before that, just to explain to the Israeli public what exactly happened in the past 24 hours. Many are confused. He will try to set things out.
Exactly. Try to explain to me, because it seems that just in the last few hours, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is sending confused messages to his political, let's say, allies and to the opposition, and also to the citizens of Israel. How the people who are close to Benjamin Netanyahu are reacting to this? How is he going to explain this? Because in the morning he says, okay, we're not going to attack, and now he has to attack.
Well, Netanyahu did start briefing from last night. His bureau starts briefing about how good a ceasefire would be at this point. But all the time they keep reiterating that that if Hamas continues the rocket fire, Israel will attack, will respond forcefully. And that is exactly what happened. They gave a much more shorter time than anyone expected. Everyone was surprised that it was only 5 or 6 hours. But since the rocket fire continued, Netanyahu lived up to his word and said ordered to continue the attack. There are many questions regarding the international legitimacy. Did Netanyahu make this move only to strengthen Egypt? Did Netanyahu decide on this move only to gain international legitimacy? In any case, when we saw him earlier today speaking beside the German Foreign Minister Steinmeier, who gave him a very, very wide support, you could understand that one of the reasons for this act was to say, okay, Israel stopped fire, Hamas is the one who didn't, and now Israel has legitimacy to continue with the operation. But we'll, of course, have to wait and see how the evening develops, and we'll, of course, update you with any information we get.
Yes, Tal Shalev, thank you very much for this. So, Yoav, let's try to understand. You spoke that it was a very inconvenient situation for the Hamas people, but it's also an inconvenient position and situation for also President Mahmoud Abbas.
Definitely, Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority is actually set aside. We know that there is a unity government, a Palestinian unity government, but actually this government does not really control the events on the ground in the Gaza Strip, where Hamas is still in control of everything that happens. It means actually that it's only a symbolic control that the Palestinian Authority has in Gaza, and actually they have only a symbolic role to play. President Mahmoud Abbas is unable to meddle, is unable to be the go-between the two sides, and I think that this puts him in a very bad position. Add to this, it has very courageous declarations against the violence that erupted from the Gaza Strip, and because he was so clear on that, and because he criticized Hamas for that, the people of the Palestinian people do not like him, and his popularity is really low at this stage.
Yeah, we just wanted to say that the one casualty that Israel had that was right now injured from the last attack just passed away a few minutes ago. So unfortunately, I just don't want to continue saying this, but it seems that as long as this operation is going to end, this now Hamas will look at this casualty, at this death, at this person who got killed, a victory.
Yeah, well, Hamas is very proud by the fact that they hit civilians, that the Israelis are killed. Usually it's civilians and not soldiers. This is true as long as Israel does not, enter into the Gaza Strip and attacking only from the air. I think that whoever is killed from this day on, this is something that was very easily we were able to prevent from any more killings only if Hamas accepted the ceasefire. I think, on the other hand, Lucy, if I can add to this, that from the Israeli perspective, I think that it's not enough to wait 2 hours to see that Hamas doesn't stop the fire. I would wait longer until I hit back. I think that, like Tal mentioned, your correspondent, the international legitimacy is very important for Israel. I would have waited longer before I would declare that I'm going to occupy the rest of the Gaza Strip. This is not feasible. Israel cannot occupy the rest of the Gaza Strip, and it will have to accept the fact that Hamas will continue to be a leading factor in the Palestinian people.
I'm trying to understand, because every single day we're talking about the weak position of Hamas, and you just talked about the inconvenient situation that President Mahmoud Abbas is in. It seems for a point that for a specific point there, that the stage, that this move that Mahmoud Abbas did to do the unity government, the so-called unity government, is to try and make himself stronger in the West Bank and stronger in the Gaza Strip. And it seems that for the last days, Hamas is maybe weak, but also Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, is getting weaker and weaker, and this is not good for Israel as well.
On the long run, I would say that it is very bad for Israel, because Israel does not have any other possibility other than accepting the fact that the Palestinian people needs their own strong institutions. If you don't have strong institutions, violence will erupt.
Who is not listening to what you're explaining to me? I'm not saying this because you are saying that what President Mahmoud Abbas is saying and sending and condemning all the acts of Hamas and condemning the kidnapping and saying out loud, listen, I am against. So this is a big signal to Israel, basically, come and I need your help. I need you to make me stronger. But Israel doesn't listen to this.
Israel doesn't listen to this. It doesn't want to have Abbas as a go-between. It doesn't want to have the current government, at least, doesn't want Abbas to have an ability to lead reforms that are not related to the security issue that Israel is concerned. I think that this is an Israeli mistake, if you ask me, right? Now, but it's true to say, and this is what the Israeli government is saying, that Hamas does not control the Gaza Strip. And in this case, you cannot reach an agreement with Abbas on the Gaza Strip while Hamas is controlling the Gaza Strip.
But when he tried to do a move that he's trying to control Hamas, Israel said, well, you are in a government where a terror organization is in it. So Israel is blocking him, basically, from each side of the road.
Well, Israel is blocking him, but it is not totally true, because the Palestinian people are split. Gaza Strip is different, and it's not different. The people are the same people. It's the Palestinian people. But Hamas is controlling, not like many people say, by the fact that they became a government because of the Palestinian democracy, but rather because they took over the Gaza Strip from the Fatah a few years ago, and they controlled Gaza Strip undemocratically.
Yes, we will just get back and continue with this conversation. But right now, with us live from Ashkelon in southern Israel is our I-24 News correspondent, Eli Ochlenberg. Eli, it was a really hectic day, if we can say in one way or another, in Ashkelon.
Well, Lucy, hectic is underestimating what the Ashkelon resident has been through today. We are now at the exact point where a direct hit was recorded only half an hour ago. Now, Yoni, our cameraman, will show you the exact building where that suffered a direct hit. As you can see, there's a lot of people here gathering around, and even though they got used to this reality where there is a threat of direct hits, they are still gathering together every time there is such an incident. And at the same time, at another area in Ashkelon, another direct hit. A really tough day for the southern residents. It's been an extremely intensive day, endless red siren alerts since early this morning, and until now they didn't have even 1 hour without a red siren alert. So there's not even a point to talk about the ceasefire, because this is probably one of the most intensive days the city of Ashkelon has experienced since this operation had begun. And we've been talking to a lot of the southern Israeli residents today, and without a doubt, they all think that Israel shouldn't agree to such an agreement. Israel should pursue, in their opinion, to attack the Gaza Strip and to paralyze Hamas as severely as possible. So very tough feelings here today, especially in Ashkelon. Again, we're at the location of a direct hit, and miraculously, yet again, no injuries were reported, but not an easy scenario to digest, Lucy.
Yes, definitely. Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much for this for now, and of course you will keep on updating us. Let's say, the sound of the civilians, the sound of the people is always ringing in Benjamin Netanyahu's head, is always ringing in his ears. And this is also an inner, let's say, battle that he has, except of the political arena and except of the outside battles that he has. He also has a battle on the PR with the people of Israel.
Yeah, definitely. As any politician, he has to listen carefully to what the street says and also to his political allies within the government. But if we look at the street, I think that what Eli said is accurate. People in the street, if you talk to them, they would say, we must finish this, we must continue the operation until Hamas is vanished. This is, unfortunately, if you check it rationally, it's impossible to do that. It will not be possible to execute, to have Hamas diminished. It's not possible. You can strike, you can hit Hamas, you can hit other civilians in the Gaza Strip. You should remember that there are only civilians. Not every Gazan is involved in those activities, and this is also something that unfortunately many people think don't remember in the street.
You know, you have tried to explain to me, how come the one person, Benjamin Netanyahu, who talked about Hamastan, who warned the world about this, what will happen if Israel will go out of the Gaza Strip, who talked about the missiles that will go to Ashkelon, to Ashdod, to all the south of Israel, even to Tel Aviv. How come this person is not able to do the step, basically maybe what the people want, what some of his coalition members want, and get into the Gaza Strip?
Well, going into the Gaza Strip has a huge price, and he's actually not willing to pay the price. And I'm not sure that the Israeli street is willing to pay the price, because going into the Gaza Strip means that IDF soldiers in tanks and in other ways will go around a very highly populated area, very small area, very highly populated, very dense, very dangerous. This means that people will die, and I mean Israeli soldiers that will go there, and it's not just few but many of them. Benjamin Netanyahu knows that. He knows that there are no surprises and there are no alternatives. You cannot control the Gaza Strip from far away. This is what he's been trying to do. This is impossible to do. So whenever you say go into the Gaza Strip and have Hamas disappear, this is impossible to be done at this stage.
You know, I wonder if he was in the opposition, what his stand would be. But for now, let's go to another front that Israel was in today. Shahar Peled is right now standing in Haifa, some 160 kilometers north of the Gaza Strip and towards where a rocket was fired today. Good evening, Shahar. Right now, it's calm. I don't know if calm is the right word to say about this right now.
Yes, it is, Lucy. Good evening. It has been a calm evening and afternoon here in Haifa, but the slightest hope for a real ceasefire was crushed also here in the northern part of Israel when earlier today, around noon Israel time, a rocket was fired at the greater Haifa area over the cities and towns of Chedera, Zichron Yaakov, Dalet el-Carmel, Yokneam and Binyamina, and the residents here who are still not used to this situation fled to the shelters. But this, of course, is difficult to compare to what is going on in the south and even center of Israel. We hear of heavy fire throughout the day and now of the first official fatality on the crossing, the Erez crossing on the Gaza border. Here from where we stand, Hamas, of course, claimed responsibility over the attack earlier today and claimed it tried to reach Haifa. From where we stand, you can see the sensitive factory area and bay area of Haifa, which of course was probably the target. And I don't.
We are sorry for that. Just it went off a live show, of course. Like we said today, Haifa also was targeted and was hit by a missile. Of course, we're talking about a lot of fronts right now in Israel. We're talking about the southern front, the northern front, and also the center front, and of course the political arena front. And right now joining me in the studio is Brigadier General in the Reserves, Gilad Inbar, former IDF commander of the South. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
So, we've been talking here with Yoav, and we've been trying to understand all the voices that are asking Benjamin Netanyahu to go on the ground, to put boots on the ground, to put the IDF in, and basically maybe to reoccupy the Gaza Strip. How right is it? Okay. Before you answer me, because Benjamin Netanyahu is about to give a speech, we're going right now live to see and hear the press conference that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is giving right now in the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv. Like we're watching, Benjamin Netanyahu is about to answer some questions or to give a speech and to explain the really complex situation that he was in today. He started the day by saying that he's going to ceasefire with Hamas, and then a barrage of rockets hit on Israel, making him go back and basically making him give a new statement. We are seeing Benjamin Netanyahu right now speaking, but we cannot hear him. We will fix it just in a short while. So, Gilad, just I started asking you a question. What do you think that do you think that it will be a mistake to go on the ground and to put the soldiers maybe in a trap?
Complicated question. It depends. I mean, to use the tool of ground attack to reoccupy the Gaza Strip, from my point of view, it's a big mistake. But if we find targets with specific intelligence to send our troop, they can do it. Meanwhile, I think we have a lot to do with our other weapon system, Air Force, the sea, some other system that we cannot expose. So I think we have a lot to go before using the tool of a ground attack.
So we're just right now have the sound, and we will just hear what Benjamin Netanyahu has to say.
למדינת ישראל ולצה"ל כדי להגן עליכם מירי הרקטות.
No, can't hear.
פיגועים במנהרות ובאמצעים אחרים. עדיף היה לפתור זאת בדרך מדינית. כך ניסינו לעשות שנענינו היום אותה הצעה מצרית להפסקת אש. אבל החמאס לא מכיר בידינו אלא להרחיב ולהעצים את המערכה נגדו. וכך נפעל עד שנשיג את מטרתנו, השבת השקט לאזרחי ישראל תוך פגיעה משמעותית בארגון הטרור. אלה רגעים בהם צריך לקבל החלטות.
We need to take decisions in a calm way and in a long way.
ולא בהתלהמות. אני נחוש לעשות את הדבר.
I'm determined to do the right thing.
אני יודע שאתם סומכים עליי.
And I know that you count on me.
שנתעלם מרעשי הרקע.
To ignore the noises.
לשמור על הביטחון שלכם.
And to continue protecting you, your lives, and your security. We will do our utmost, everything, so that the quiet, peace and quiet, the calm will return to the state of Israel and to you. Shalom one and all. From the afternoon hours, the IDF forces started attacking once again the Gaza Strip. Now, this very hour, they are intensively hitting and striking at the terror organization of Hamas and other targets, and we will continue to do so for the next few days. Over the last passing week, since the beginning of Protective Edge operation, Hamas has been beaten very severely. Infrastructures, institutions, stockpiles, production facilities, their arsenal and their stockpile of missiles and their tunnels were destroyed. They are an organization that have paid a very high price because of the firing of rockets and missiles against Israel, and they will discover the destruction that has been caused to their organization to such a degree that they will definitely be they will think very heavily before they start another round. We tried to accept a ceasefire, but they continued. We said that we will accept that ceasefire, and we will reiterate it, but we will not compromise. We will not suffer any firing against the cities or to anyone who tries and disturb the lives of our citizens. We will not compromise on the lives of our citizens, our soldiers, and we will only complete this operation when quiet returns. We will continue hitting at Hamas whenever, on the ground, in the air, and at sea. I would like to continue strengthening and wishing the strength of all the citizens through their regional authorities, all those under the threat of missile threats. Please continue listening and adhering to all instructions of the Home Front Command. We will continue acting with discretion, but with our full consideration. I would like, through the Chief of Staff and the commanders and the soldiers, to strengthen you and wish you strength, because you are continuing hitting those terror organizations in the Gaza Strip, and wish also to wish the greatest of strength to the IDF forces, the security, and the citizens of Israel. Thank you. Good evening. For the last weeks and, of course, the last days, we've been following very closely what is happening on the Lebanese-Syrian borders, exactly what has been happening, but the most of the effort, with the collaboration of our general security forces, the IDF, and all the emergency services. We have been working in the southern arena, both on offensive and on the defensive side, hitting at the terror organizations in order to return the calm and peace and quiet to the state of Israel, especially to the southern sector, while creating a better security situation and infrastructure. This effort of defense and offense has actually borne fruit. The direct achievements through these various strikes, at the various dimensions of these strikes, have achieved things immensely, not only on the actual protective edge that we basically have spread out, has met the needs in a very effective manner. And I have been going around, wandering from place to place. I've seen the commanders, the civilians, the soldiers, the directors of the regional authorities, perhaps a little less of my soldiers and commanders, but I was truly impressed by first-class leadership, responsibility, steadfast, a lack of perhaps hysteria and panic. And I am calling upon the civilians to continue doing so in the way they have been steadfast and resilient. But unfortunately, although we have striked, it is still not sufficient. So therefore, you cannot yet go back to your routine until we know exactly what is happening. But please continue showing your resilience. It is so important for the IDF and for all of us, and for the the long-winded stretch that may lie ahead. And therefore, if we're talking about ground forces, air and sea, all the headquarters and the commanders, everyone is ready and they are steadfast and they intend to achieve any accomplishment in any possible way, in any possible dimension. And as we said over the last few hours, when the ceasefire was not carried out, then IDF continued empowering, and it has continued intensifying its strikes and will continue to do so by air, at sea, and on the ground, according to the decisions of the political echelons.
Yes, of course, these were, let's say, the statements that were given from Benjamin Netanyahu and from the defense minister and from Benny Gantz.
I didn't hear anything about Prime Minister going to ground attack. So
nobody talked about a ground attack. I heard the same right now, the same declaration that was 7 days ago of the three of them, saying that a fire will be answered with fire. So what is it? Israel is still keeping quiet and still acting in a really careful way?
We have many tools, and this government will use the right tool and the right time. Now, I don't know if you know, from the political point of view, my opinion is really the opposite of that government. But I must say, I don't believe that I hear myself saying that I have full trust and full confidence that they do the right thing. Because since they start this operation, that was not initiated by them.
Yes.
They act really wisely,
and in a
calmly,
responsible way.
and in the right way.
We can say that Benjamin Netanyahu is showing a lot of responsibility in this operation. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu is not a person who is eager to go out and to battlefields, but it seems really that this time we can give him the benefit of the doubt, and we can actually say that Benjamin Netanyahu was really acting in a wise way.
Yeah.
Why should we give the Hamas that benefit by moving so close to the range that they accept? Now we have really, I think, almost endless advantage by using our technological advantage, our ethical advantage, our strengths in a way that they can't even respond.
Let's try to imagine. Okay, let's try to imagine that the Prime Minister was Ehud Barak, or the Prime Minister was Ehud Olmert, or the Prime Minister was, let's say, you tell me, I just started forgetting, like Ariel Sharon. In this current situation, do you think that the boots were already on the ground?
I'm not sure. What I am sure about is that Benjamin Netanyahu in the opposition would say that the boots has to be on the ground.
Of course.
So, and you say in Hebrew things we see from here, you cannot see from there.
And Ariel Sharon said the same sentence.
Yeah, about Gaza. And I think that Netanyahu has proved it this time, and he's doing a very good job as a prime minister. He's not panicked. The decisions that are taken are very responsible. He actually listens to what other leaders are telling him, don't go on the ground, and he doesn't want to go on the ground. And let's be honest, he wanted this operation to be finished this morning. And this was not possible. So he will, what I heard between the lines from what he said, okay, we'll continue as long as, quiet is not there. It doesn't give an exit strategy. But and this is, this plays bad against him. And now I think that the diplomatic efforts of the Arab countries and other actors will play the game.
But it seems that the Arab countries are not eager to play the game, because it seems that Qatar is just staying still, and Egypt is just passing messages. It seems that Jordan is trying to do some kind of meeting with Germany, and it seems that the West is more interested now, not even more than the United States, to get to an understanding between Israel and the Gaza Strip and Hamas.
Yeah, I think I said it previously, but Hamas is in a position that it was not in for many years. Nobody is willing to talk to them. Maybe the German intelligence will, okay, but other than him, in the Arab world, Egypt is not talking to them, Jordan is not talking to them, only Qatar is talking to them. This is a situation that they never experienced before. And the change is mainly in Cairo, in Egypt.
Yeah.
Egypt
the key is in Egypt.
Yeah,
Egypt
has changed.
But Egypt is not...
And the Hamas eventually will do whatever the Egyptian asked them to do.
You think that Egypt
it will take some days maybe, but they don't have any choice. Even now there is, I don't know, you must understand, there is big mess between the Hamas leadership, between the
military
leadership, the political leadership. So they really have problem. So I believe it will take day or two, and we're gonna eat them very hard. I mean, the military arm of the Hamas are going to pay for that.
Not only going to pay, it seems that each and every day that is passing, Israel is doing the job for Egypt, for Qatar, for the Arab countries, and basically killing, you know, in a metaphoric way, slowly Hamas, and making it weaker and weaker for every other state that is standing and wants to see Hamas weaker.
This is true to governments in the region. I think that almost every government is happy with what's going on to Hamas. The peoples, the Arab peoples all around the Middle East are not very happy with what we see in Gaza. We are talking about destroying Hamas people. Giora, maybe you can explain to us. Hamas leadership is not hurt.
They're underground.
They're underground.
What can you do? Listen.
Yeah, and not hurt. And we cannot hurt them.
Listen. The reason we don't eat them underground is only because of an ethical reason, because the weapon or the ammunition that can do the work there gonna hit a lot of civilians. And that's why they are there. And they know it.
Fine.
And they take advantage on our moral values.
Israel's trying to not get to the same situation that it got to in Pillar of Defense, for example, when a lot of people got killed in one hit when Israel tried to get to the leaders.
Yeah.
So just before we continue this discussion, Shai Ben-Ari, our I-24 News correspondent, joins us right now from Tel Aviv near the Iron Dome battery. And Shai, we just a short while ago, just around 45 minutes ago, we experienced here some sirens, and of course the Iron Dome intercepted at least 3 rockets over the city of Tel Aviv.
Correct, Lucy. There was an interception over our heads. Not the Iron Dome battery behind me, one to the south of here. We understand we were actually making our way to this point at that hour, and we could see those interceptions overhead. I can tell you actually that when we were making our way on the highway, these kinds of situations can create some pretty difficult ones on the ground, on the highway to be specific. Basically, the directions for drivers are to stop on the side of the road, no matter where you are, and stop the car and take cover. Now, when you do this on a highway, I don't have to tell you, that can create some pretty dangerous situations, and there is a real dilemma for each driver, really a dilemma each driver faces when that situation happens. Basically, that is what people are living with here. This conflict has renewed itself, it must be said, in full force today. It's difficult to remember that we were even seriously talking about a ceasefire in the morning. Basically, over 100 rockets have been fired in the direction of Israeli towns this day, and including Tel Aviv, including Beersheba, including Dimona. A real effort by Hamas to show that its capabilities are still intact, still capable of striking Israeli communities all over this country, including the ones, of course, enveloping the Gaza Strip. Those have not been left alone. So we're back to the drawing board, maybe, and no end in sight for this conflict. We'll have to see what happens next.
Yes, Shai Ben-Ari, thank you very much for this. Of course, we will get back to you during this broadcast. You know, I don't want to try to be a psychologist, but I saw...
Try. Go for it.
Let's try, because we're trying to be a lot of things in the last few days. But seeing General Gantz sitting there, and seeing the Minister of the Bogi, Ayalon sitting there, basically to see the way that they were sitting and looking at the Prime Minister, they felt inconvenient about this decision. It seems that they have a feeling that they should do more, but the Prime Minister is not giving them the green light.
No, I don't agree.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I think that the media try to draw that picture. You know, there is big argument if the influence of the media on that event, but to be researched in the future or investigate. Now, but I don't think so, because those generals, which some of them were with me in the army, I mean, I was with them, we understand the limitation of the power. And we understand that world change. The wars are not the way we used to see them in the past. Nobody put flags on the hill with a victory sign. No. You can win, or you can gain a deterrence, deterring of the enemy by your weapons, by your systems in a better way. Now listen, from the military point of view, the equation between us and the Hamas doesn't exist. I mean, it's endless gap. So we have to be smart enough to find the right tool to gain our target and achievement without destroying everything.
Which always makes me ask the question, how come when Hamas knows that they cannot actually win this battle, they cannot actually, let's say, try and fight the Iron Dome, because it's not only fighting the IDF, it's now fighting the Iron Dome. So they can threaten, and they can say that they have a lot of surprises for Israel, and they can say that they can put a clock and say, okay, at 9 o'clock we're going to attack you. But at the end of the day, Israelis look at it at a pathetic way. If we're just looking at the social media, they're laughing at Hamas. They're not taking Hamas in a serious way, except the people in southern Israel that are been experiencing this for the last 14 years. How come Hamas is not giving up and saying, okay, this we cannot beat?
They're desperate. And he told you, the Hamas now, in such a weak position that I've never seen it before. Yeah. I mean, from every point you check, military,
economically,
politically, whatever. Yeah. So when you're so desperate, you don't act with any logic. And this is not logical.
Giora, well, in addition to this would be that I think that what we are saying about Hamas is our perspective about Hamas. We're trying to be as accurate as we can, right? But from an internal point of view for Hamas, Hamas is, wants to give another vision, another image of itself and of what happened. This is why we see lies in the media from Hamas speakers. I mean, they actually lie, or what seems to be a lie, telling their people we are succeeding, we have succeeded to have a drone going into Israel, and actually they have succeeded in trying to attack Tel Aviv and Haifa. I live up north. We had sirens that we never had before, and this is small success because we do have Iron Dome, but this is a change. The fact that you hear sirens in Tel Aviv is a change, is their success. It's a very limited success, and definitely for their own people. In my perspective, the Arabs, the Palestinians, they are not, they see the full picture. At the end of the day, they will understand that Hamas made them pay a huge price for their own political reasons. They actually played the game on their backs, on the back of the Palestinian people, of the Gaza people. And I think that what Hamas is trying to do, by the way, through they're going after what Hezbollah did in the past, right? They're trying they go underground. This is what Hassan Nasrallah did. They sent missiles. This is what Hezbollah taught them. They're saying drones. This is also was done by Hezbollah. And now today they're also broadcasting in Twitter in Hebrew, talking to Israeli citizens. They are trying to follow the footsteps of Hezbollah. But if I was a Palestinian, I would be ashamed of what they do.
Let's just. I don't think that the Palestinians right now know exactly if they're ashamed or not about what is happening there, because right now they're experiencing this, and not the people who are under the ground, hiding under the ground. But joins us right now Tal Shalev from the Ministry of Defense in Tel Aviv. Tal, we heard Benjamin Netanyahu. He said basically the same things that he said 7 days ago, and it seems that it's not going to be any easier on him in the coalition tonight or tomorrow.
Well, Netanyahu definitely has a tense night ahead of him after the statement, which was basically the explanation of the past 24 hours. After this statement, Netanyahu will be convening a security cabinet meeting, which will probably be very tense, and we can get a hint of it from Netanyahu. In his statement, he speaks about background noises. He says, "I know you think I am responsible." He speaks to the people of Israel. He says, "I know you know I am responsible. I know you know I am acting with a full mind and in a very responsible way. And please do not regard the background noises." So who are these background noises? One primarily is the Israeli Foreign Minister, Avigdor Lieberman, who today at around 4 o'clock, just when the ceasefire totally collapsed, convened a press conference and actually lectured Netanyahu, not directly, but he did imply that Netanyahu was hesitant, and he called for a much more tougher action in the Gaza Strip. And the other one is right-wing Minister Naftali Bennett, who's been more quiet in the past 24 hours, but is definitely one of the people Netanyahu refers to when he talks about background noises. But all in all, the diplomatic message and the message to the Israeli public this evening is that Israel was left with no choice. With no ceasefire, Israel chose fire because the Hamas didn't accept the Egyptian proposal. Israel did prefer the diplomatic situation, but Hamas left him no choice.
Hamas left him no choice, but it seems, Tal, do you know maybe the international community left him no choice? Maybe the Americans left him no choice? Maybe the Germans left him no choice, but to basically stay still and not act even more than Israel's acting right now in the Gaza Strip?
Well, basically, I think the key contact in these negotiations and in all of the diplomatic events in the past few days has been Egypt. Cairo has been the center of all of the communications. Israeli officials and Egyptian officials have been in very, very close contact. Israel would not say no to the Egyptian administration after proposing this proposal. It's true that the Americans are behind the scenes pressuring not to go into a ground offensive, as well as European countries. But today we heard the German Foreign Minister Steinmeier say very clearly that Germany supports Israel's right to defend itself. And actually, in a way, in the 5-6 hours that did pass, in which Israel did agree to a ceasefire, there was a wave of international legitimacy condemning the rockets. We heard both Steinmeier and the U.S. Secretary of State, John Kerry, really condemning the rockets and supporting Israel. So in many ways, this move did succeed to rally some international support. But of course, the diplomatic game is still ahead. The fighting will not go on forever, and efforts are still being undertaken and will be undertaken in the upcoming days to try and mediate another ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas.
Yes, Tal Shalev, thank you very much for this. So, we are seeing that the foreign minister, Avigdor Lieberman, just was really, really eager to go to the press and say that Israel should reoccupy the Gaza Strip. Of course, it's a political game, Yoav. This is, we know for sure. But what? Is it going to, is he in one way or another going to announce that he's going to break his, or to divorce Benjamin Netanyahu totally right now?
There was a very bad timing for him announcing a few days ago that the Likud and the Israel Beitenu parties will split. They will not run again for the elections. This is a sign of weaknesses in the Israeli coalition.
But he said that he's not going to break the coalition. Today, it seems that the sound was totally different.
Yeah, but the minute you differentiate yourself from the prime ministers, it means that you have problems within the coalition, and that he will have to be in internal opposition, saying we have to reoccupy Gaza. He knows this is not going to happen. This is why he says that. If he was in a responsible position, he wouldn't have said what he said today.
You were there. You were in the Gaza Strip. You know how it looked like. Of course, it's changed a lot in the last few years, and since Israel did the unilateral disengagement from there. Can Israel get back to the Gaza Strip? Should Israel get back to the Gaza Strip? Maybe Avigdor Lieberman, the foreign minister, is right. Maybe this is the only solution.
Of course, Israel can do it. Should it be done? Never. We've been there. We've been there, you know, and the leader that led us out was the hero of all our security history.
Yes,
and he understood that by staying there, we don't gain any security to our people. We just get in trouble. I believe that when we left Gaza, we should do it in a better way. I think if we could do it after an agreement with Abu Mazen, it could be better. But this is an history. I think no one which has a logical way of thinking will go back there. Still, as I said before, we have some opportunities to make the Hamas reconsider its policy. By the way, I believe that parallel to our military hit, we have to start to maintain a kind of political process.
With who? With Hamas? Or with or to go back to the negotiation table?
I wish we could do it with Abu Mazen. I don't think he's strong enough. But you know what? I really can't understand. I don't want to try to guess or to pretend as an expert, because I really cannot understand the Palestinian people in Gaza. Listen what's happening now there. How they accept the Hamas leadership. Why day after day they pay so many casualties by the leaders are under the ground, and in each decision of the leadership they're going to be miserable and miserable and miserable and nothing happens. And you know, the Hamas leadership never spent a penny on their defense system or shelters.
I will answer you this. We asked them this question, the people on the Gaza Strip, and right now they are being threatened not to speak with I-24 News anymore. So try to imagine.
They're afraid from the Hamas.
And from I-24, and Hamas is afraid from I-24 News, which is very good. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this. We're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of this special edition. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to this I-24 News special edition, where we continue our extended coverage for the last escalation between Israel and the Gaza Strip. And with me right now is Lior Weintraub, former chief of staff of the Israeli embassy in Washington. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And also Amir Oren, defense, government, and analyst, defense and government analyst for Arts Daily News.
We are all exhausted.
Yeah, believe me, we're so exhausted. So many hours, it should come naturally. Amir, we just heard the chief of staff, the defense minister, and also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It seems that we didn't hear anything different than what we heard a week ago.
Well, there have been several events over the last week, and especially today, which started with the cabinet decision to accept the ceasefire proposal. And apparently it has collapsed, but the accent is on apparently, because we are still negotiating by fire over the terms for this ceasefire, and the most educated guess is that when the smoke gets over, it will still be the ceasefire that we hope to see.
It seems that even the Palestinians are understanding these days that Israel is acting in a really precise hits and really precise way, and it's not doing big operations, because even if we're looking at the Palestinian reportings, they're saying that Israel is acting not in a big operation. There's still some airstrikes. Some places are getting hit. You see it by the language that the Palestinians are speaking.
You're talking in the present tense, and this may change. If the
exactly what I want to ask is it going to continue this way? If
the process to end the campaign, all of this haggling over the ceasefire terms, if this brings us no progress, then Israel may restart its preparations for a ground action, which could take one of several options. And then we will see another phase of this campaign, and it will not be limited to action from the air.
Lior, where is the United States?
Well,
gave up?
The United States was here for a few hours today, and they went back to Vienna to talk with the P5+1, which I think...
more important things, you're saying?
Maybe more a friendly environment in some ways. Kerry was here. I think we saw the ritual that we're used to see, that Secretary of State is coming to negotiate or to mediate the final terms of a ceasefire, but we found that the United States today is lacking the influence and the gravitas in order to push the sides. And I think the sides kind of told the Secretary Kerry, we'll call you a bit later. Right now, we're good by ourselves.
Let's see what Secretary John Kerry had to say today in Vienna. Let's hear what he had to say.
I cannot condemn strongly enough the actions of Hamas in so brazenly firing rockets in multiple numbers in the face of a goodwill effort to offer a ceasefire in which Egypt and Israel have joined together. We need to remember what is at stake here, and we will continue to work for a ceasefire. Now, at the moment, one of the reasons I'm going to Washington and not to Egypt, just to answer possibly another question ahead of time, is because there was this offer on the table. And we believe that it was important to give this offer an opportunity. And I still think perhaps reason could prevail if the political wing can deal with the military wing and Egypt can have some leverage. Let's see what happens.
Secretary Kerry is really offended.
I think that the United States is very sober about the amount of influence they have on the event in the Middle East right now, is in the aftermath of the Arab Spring and the collapse of the peace negotiation in last April. And they're doing their best. I mean, they're really anxious to see de-escalation of the event, of the fighting. They would really like to see to restart the peace process. But so they're doing their best. We got from the President and from Secretary Kerry the legitimation that was needed, that Israel is operating in self-defense and it is entitled to do anything within its power in a way to stop Hamas from firing, but there's not much they can do right now.
Amir, explain to me this new equation of Egypt, Jordan, Germany, and Qatar. What is this new, and how come Germany got in the middle all of a sudden?
Because the missing ingredient in what you just recounted is Turkey, and Germany historically has a special relationship with Turkey, so it all ties together. However, there is no real urgency in those efforts because Israeli casualties have been minimal. Only today Israel suffered its first killed. A civilian who went over to the border to help the soldiers bring them food. It was unfortunate and also unnecessary to get killed in this way. Yeah. But other than that, Israel has no casualties. There is no ground invasion. Hamas and Israel are exchanging blows, so all the powers, the regional powers and the international powers that you mentioned, are not in such a hurry to solve this crisis.
Amir, we just heard that Benjamin Netanyahu finally took a decision, a certain decision that maybe was obvious, and he fired the Deputy Minister of Defense, Dani Danon. Well, at least he took a decision finally on something.
So this would leave two very happy people, Netanyahu and Danon. Netanyahu showing leadership, and Danon finally managed to provoke Netanyahu into firing him, making him a shahid, a martyr to the right in Israel.
I don't think that Dani Danon will be happy to hear you saying that he's a shahid, as he's a martyr.
Well, you know, within the Likud, the right wing has the upper hand. Netanyahu has been frustrated in trying to wrest control over his party from the Danons of the Likud. And if it would come to a vote in the party's central committee, Danon would probably prevail over Netanyahu.
You know, these are the background voices that he was talking about that are annoying him this entire crisis.
It's interesting that he has been criticized from the right, from within his coalition, within his party, much more than from the left during this campaign. He has become much more centrist by virtue of being attacked from the right without even moving.
It's amazing to see how the opposition that is supposed to go against Benjamin Netanyahu, like you're saying, is embracing each and every step that he is doing. If we're looking right now in the international community reactions, and if we're looking about how the world is watching this entire affair, this entire operation, is Israel right now in a good balance, and if we can use this word?
Well, the answer is yes, no, and it's reversible, as my professor in international relations used to say. But there is one difference tonight, between tonight and last night, one of the things that Amir has mentioned. Tonight, Israel gained very important diplomatic points. We were offered a ceasefire by the Egyptian. We accepted it. Hamas refused and shot 100 missiles into Israel. We find ourselves tonight on the same side as the Arab League, Egypt, EU, US, you name it, while Hamas is isolated in the international community, in the Arab world, and I dare to say also within his own people. So this is important. It's also important to stress that these points are very temporary. They are not ours to keep, and by tomorrow or the next day they can vanish, but still these points were lacking the start of this operation, so we should be thankful for what we have.
Yes.
In other circumstances or in earlier campaigns, what Lior just said would have given Israel quite a broad, quite a wide room for maneuver. However, right now, Netanyahu doesn't want to use up this room, first of all, because of the Geneva talks with Iran, which were mentioned earlier. He wants to close down this operation a few days before Sunday the 20th, so that headlines are not going to be crowded by both Gaza and Iran. And he doesn't want to undertake the ground operation, even though he may do so now by virtue of the legitimacy he gained. He doesn't want to do it because he knows that he doesn't have the 7 to 10 days needed to exploit what the ground forces can do. If it is stopped after a couple of days, he has done nothing and only suffered casualties.
To add to what Amir said, I was in the U.S. during the Operation Cast Lead, and I remember the very strong points, the very strong words that President Bush said on the second day of the operation. If I compare these words to what President Obama said, at least what was published in the readout of the conversation between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama, I guess that the window that we have for maneuvering and for exploiting the possibility that Amir mentioned is very, very narrow. I wouldn't say not weeks, but several days. And
Benjamin Netanyahu knows this. Benjamin Netanyahu feels that he needs to close this as soon as he can before he is getting into a mess that he cannot get out of.
I think he knows that. I think he's looking for somebody who can mediate a ceasefire, because he's very civil in the way he uses power. Among Israeli Prime Minister, I think he's the one who showed the most restraint in using power during his three tenures as prime minister. If you compare that to Prime Minister Olmert and Prime Minister Sharon, who even if the U.S. administration would have said, please stop or stop right now, would have done whatever they think is necessary to protect the state of Israel.
Netanyahu didn't initiate this conflict. Hamas did.
You just gave a compliment to Benjamin Netanyahu?
I just mentioned the fact that he did not initiate this operation.
You know, I'm hearing a lot of surprising things about you. You're not being cynical towards Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It means that something big is happening.
This is one possible reading of what is happening. Another possible reading is that only now, with the firing of Dani Danon, had we discovered that indeed there is a prime minister there. Maybe nobody was there in the dark, closed room reserved for the prime minister. However, Hamas escalated events over the last several weeks into this operation by virtue of having this tunnel dug under Kerem Shalom, intended to sneak in dozens of troops in order to kill or capture civilians or soldiers in the south. And for their own reasons, the Hamas leaders decided that this was an opportune time to start the campaign. So Netanyahu cannot be blamed or glorified, depending on whoever, for either initiating it or for wanting to end it.
So let's see the public opinion. Today, reports of a possible ceasefire in the fighting between Israel and Hamas left residents of Israel's rocket-battered south with mixed feelings. More from I-24 News correspondent Eli Ochenberg, who was in southern Israel today.
After 8 days of heavy rocket barrages, Israel's southern residents hoped Operation Protective Edge would bring an indefinite period of calm to the region. But as talks on a ceasefire agreement gained traction, the scenario they feared the most was realized. The fighting will be over, but with no permanent halt to the Hamas missile threat.
It will be a shame if Israel will stop the operation without results. I am the owner of this place, as well as other businesses in the area. All the businesses here were affected. I'm willing to take all the economic losses to my business. This is a dark day for us. We feel like Hamas has won.
During the operation, southern residents put aside their own personal fears, realizing that only through a risky ground assault would Israel be able to paralyze Hamas' ability to launch rockets. But their expectations are now being shattered, and the understanding they will have to continue living under constant threat of rocket attacks is sinking in.
I'm very disappointed. I expected Prime Minister Netanyahu to go all the way with the operation and finish off Hamas.
I support continuing the war. I'm not in favor of a ground invasion to Gaza. It's scary, no doubt, but we've got to find a way to finish it.
Regardless of when or even whether a ceasefire will come into effect, or if Israel will indeed eventually carry out a ground assault on the Gaza Strip, Israel's southern residents feel slightly betrayed, as in their eyes, they are, yet again, being left alone on the country's battlefield.
And yes, we just heard her. Let's see her now. Eli Ochenberg is in Ashkelon in southern Israel. Eli, so what are the latest developments in Ashkelon? Quiet, not quiet? We didn't hear any sirens for now.
Well, no sirens for now, but we did have a direct hit here only an hour and a half or so ago, and it was a really intensive day for the residents of Ashkelon and other southern cities. Heavy barrages of rockets since early this morning, all throughout the day. And you know, Lucy, we've been touring southern Israel since this operation had begun, and at the beginning of this operation, you could feel that the southern residents had a sincere hope that maybe this situation where they're in a constant threat of rocket fire from the Gaza Strip will be over, and they will finally be able to live a normal life. But now their hopes really has been shattered. They feel slightly betrayed, as said in their report. They feel that what they were promised was not actually happening. They wanted Israel to pursue a widespread operation that will severely damage Hamas infrastructure. And at the moment, even though we are are heading towards further escalation. It wasn't out of a power position, in their opinion, and again, they were willing to live in this crazy reality when you have very, very heavy barrages of rockets for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. But they wanted this situation to be completely over. And obviously, this is not the situation. So I believe that even when this operation in this way or another will be over, there will be a lot of thinking to do. And we will hear the voices of southern residents of Israel when this operation will be finalized as well. Really deep frustration here this evening, Lucy.
Yes, a lot of frustration from the civilians of Israel. Thank you very much, Eli Ochenberg, for this. How can you fight the public opinion? How can you fight the streets of Israel and the southern citizens of Israel who are living this for the last 14 years?
Well, these people are understandably impatient. They've been living in such conditions for 12 years. Children have been born, started going to school, are now 12 or 13 years old, and are constantly living on this barrage. So this is understandable. However, they are naive if they believe that there is one cure-all solution that once we go in and we get out, it is not going to happen again. Because they are not concentrating on the relationship between the political, namely diplomatic, and the military. And it has to be within a diplomatic context, within a diplomatic framework, in order to gain some traction. Just going in, killing terrorists, destroying their arsenal is not going to last for more than a year or so.
How come Israel is losing each and every time in the advocacy game, in the PR game of trying to explain to the world that Israel sometimes is under attack, and the Palestinians are not the only one who are getting hurt, but also the Israelis?
I think there are some games you just can't win. And right now Israel lost its big narrative, even in the U.S., where Americans that grew up believing that Israel is a small state surrounded by many enemies, but it's also righteous and smart. And these people grew up, and their children do not remember Israel in 1967, and they look at the world in different eyes. They consume the news and their narrative from different places. So I think in contradiction to the common wisdom, that Israel is doing pretty good job in explaining itself and trying to put its truth forward. If you look in today's international networks, you can see that the context is there. The fact that Israel is under fire, the fact that Israel is, though we don't have, fortunately, we don't have these kind of pictures of turn-up children to show the world, but the stuff of Israel is there.
How can you fight this? How can you fight the pictures of death of children, death of women, death of teenagers? How can you even start fighting this? And let's face the truth. Gaza is under siege. Gaza, you cannot get out or get in. Israel did get out of the Gaza Strip, but Israel didn't actually stop controlling the entrance and the exits of Gaza.
First of all, I think by putting forward an end game, saying, look, guys, this is what we are aiming to do. This is our strategy. We don't mean to conquer or capture and control Gaza. We have no other option, and I think what Prime Minister Netanyahu did today kind of support this narrative. So once you kind of reassure the world that you are not going back to Gaza for good, you buy yourself more time. And I think that if you look generally, without knock on wood, if I may say, the world right now, I mean, Israel has been operating for 7 days, 8 days. I mean, the world is showing is understanding what is happening there, understanding that the residents of Gaza are under are being captured by Hamas militants, and they're urging Israel not to escalate, so in order to save life as much as possible.
And let's not forget that the world was occupied in totally other things. The world is occupied with Iran, and it was occupied with the World Cup, and it was occupied with Iraq, and it was occupied with Syria, and it was occupied with Lebanon and with Egypt. The world is not occupied with what is happening between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Yes, the world is, if one may generalize, the world is overwhelmed by various crises. The world is fed up with those rounds of fighting between Israel and obscure Palestinian or Muslim organizations. And the world, if at all, wants the sides, the parties here, to go to the root cause and solve it. And if it is solved, or if at least Israel shows its best and most sincere effort to do its share in order to solve this crisis, this conflict, then its efforts to counter attacks on it will be met with more understanding.
But it seems that the game is more of who is going to catch the way that the world is watching this entire situation. Who's going to catch the attention of the world? The Palestinians are playing this with the Arab world, and Israel is playing this with the rest of the world.
But Lucy, with all due respect to your honorable profession of television, of media, it is not so significant in the final analysis. Of course, governments are influenced by public opinion, and public opinion is partly shaped by the media. But when you come down to it, when you have to count the votes, when you go to the Security Council, when you have to get assistance from the United States, be it through financial aid or arms or diplomatic support, then you have to negotiate between leaders. So the pictures that you show and see on television are of fleeting importance. They are important, but then you go over to another channel, another story, and you forget all about it until your next broadcast.
Yes, until my next broadcast.
I'd like to add, I mean, we have two clocks in front of our eyes. The first one is the fighting clock, how much time the IDF needs in order to achieve the goals that the Israeli government gave it. The other clock is the diplomatic clock, which the public diplomacy is part of it. The goal of public diplomacy is to put more time on the diplomatic clock so it will be as much as synchronized as possible with the fighting clock. And I mean, right now we're pretty much in sync, and as I said before, we're looking for somebody to mediate. Maybe we're looking for somebody that will catch it and say, look, you know, please don't escalate. I think most of all, the world would like to mute the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They want to go on with their own business. Maybe a little bit of Iraq from time to time. They don't want to hear any more about Syria because Syria is a problem, and the only answer is that somebody needs to do something, and nobody wants to do anything. So maybe they're better off going to Vienna, talk about the P5+1. And
Lior has mentioned the term synchronization. The region does seem to be synchronized. The Israeli government and people are all in all synchronized. Hamas is not. If you get Khaled Mashal outside of Gaza, Ismail Haniyeh from the political leadership there, and Mohammed Def from the military wing, they're all synchronized. You are going to have a ceasefire pretty soon, perhaps tomorrow or the day after tomorrow.
And until this will happen, just let's not forget that Israel saw today some attacks from all over this south, north, every single side. In the last 24 hours, the rockets fired from Gaza again went from the south to the north of Israel, this time reaching even further to the southernmost city of Eilat. Yoav Borovitz was there.
Ceasefire was the dominant term Tuesday regarding the Operation Protective Edge in Gaza. In reality, however, ceasefire was very far from accurately describing the precise situation on the ground. Not only were dozens of rockets fired from Gaza towards Israel, but the conflict, it seems, has been stretched both to Israel's southern and northern borders, even beyond. Yesterday, for the first time since the operation started, sirens were heard in the resort town of Eilat shortly after 1:30 a.m. 2 rockets were fired towards the city, one of them hitting a parked car near one of the hotels. A second rocket exploded in an open area. 2 people were lightly wounded from shrapnel and 11 others were treated for shock. On Tuesday, 2 rockets fired from Syria into the Golan Heights exploded in open areas. No injuries or damage were reported. The rocket fire was likely the work of pro-Palestinian groups expressing solidarity with Hamas. The fire supposedly was in retaliation for yesterday's Israeli Air Force bombardment of several terror targets in the city of Quneitra, following a volley of rockets on the Golan Heights. According to Syrian media and several NGOs, between 4 and 12 people were killed in the airstrike, which means that even Syria has so far suffered more casualties in Operation Protective Edge than Israel.
Well, we just heard Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to the Israelis, and we know that when Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, is speaking to the Israelis, he has a totally different tone when he speaks to the world. Now, of course, we should expect another, let's say, speech to the world. What we should expect from him now?
There shouldn't be too much daylight between these 2 versions. First of all, because he thinks and even dreams in English, and he translates into Hebrew as he goes. But also because he's basically looking for an alibi. If he does have to order a ground operation, he has done his best to avoid it. This is what he's going to tell the world, as well as the Israeli public. I didn't want to do it. Hamas made me do it. So what can I do?
I will tell you, usually you end each and every analyst that you are doing with a punchline. So today I'm going to end it with a punchline from what you said. And I think that he will say, gentlemen, my honor, I rest my case. So I think that this time he can say that he rests his case. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to the studio. We're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back for the rest of this special edition. Don't go anywhere, 2 minutes, and we will continue our special broadcasting live from all over Israel. Don't go. Welcome back to this I-24 News special edition. We continue our special coverage of the recent escalation between Israel and Hamas. And with me right now in the studio is retired Colonel Richard Camp, former commander of the British forces in Afghanistan. Good evening.
Good evening.
Great having you here in the studio.
Great to be here.
And Daniel Sheck, former Israeli ambassador to France.
Hi.
Good to have you here. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
So, gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about the new fight that the world is fighting. And we know that Israel, in the certain ceasefire and the certain, let's say, agreement that Egypt tried to reach with Israel and Hamas, Israel demanded that Hamas will disarm from all the weaponry that they have in the Gaza Strip. In one way or another, this this is something that you cannot ask from an entity. This is something that you cannot ask from a terror organization. This is something that you can ask maybe from a country. And maybe this is the key point of this entire operation. This is the key point of every single thing that is happening recently in this region, the fight with terror. How to fight terror organizations, because you're not fighting only in the military ground, you're also fighting psychologically, and you're fighting ideas. How do you fight this?
I would say that what Israel is doing now is intended to, first of all, to write down Hamas's military capability, and also, perhaps even more importantly, to psychologically deter them from carrying on with their attacks. I think the possibility of getting them to agree to full disarmament or even substantial disarmament is very, very remote, given that their whole reason to exist is based on their desire to destroy the state of Israel and the Jewish people in Israel. So I don't think there's any possibility of getting any form of diplomatic agreement which will result in Hamas's disarmament. I think what the most effective tools are the psychological tool, the deterrent effect, as it were. And secondly, I think the undermining of the support for Hamas among the civilian population in Gaza, which itself is a huge challenge at present.
You know, we saw this in France just 2 days ago, big demonstration in France and attacking a synagogue in Paris. This extreme, let's say, ideas, these are something that the Western world is fighting right now. And to fight ideas, it seems that the West cannot actually cope with it, cannot actually fight with it, because this is something that they don't understand, how it works, how the other culture is basically thinking.
First of all, about Hamas and disarming, I think it's a demand that is as reasonable as it is unrealistic. There's not a chance that an organization like Hamas it can promise, even under duress, it can promise, but it will never do it, it will never happen. Maybe, if you look to the other side of our country, to Lebanon, we had the same situation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah didn't disarm. What did happen with Hezbollah, that it became part of the establishment in Lebanon. And that is probably the main reason why today you only have sporadic small rockets from some splinter groups that have nothing to do with Hezbollah. But about your question about France, I think it's a typical clash between a democracy that has its values and rules of a game and everything, and it's suddenly confronted with a group that has grown under the auspices of this democracy, but is not playing by the rules, and does not accept the cultural, moral, political rules of the game. And they are advocating messages that, on the one hand, are very painful for the mainstream French people to listen to, but on the other hand, they are incapable of telling them, shut up, you're not allowed to say this, because this is undemocratic. So I don't know how to answer your question, how do you fight this fight? But clearly, this is something that is here to stay for quite a while, this clash.
Britain managed to, in this way or another, control this, or they're facing the same problem?
I think we face very much the same problem in Britain. And we've certainly tried a number of extremely costly measures to shall we say, to head off the worsening of this threat. And I don't believe that any of them have succeeded. And I think the most successful means that we have found of dealing with the threat of extremism from the Islamic community in the United Kingdom is through intelligence. And our intelligence services have developed their capabilities very, very significantly and have disrupted many, many plots. And I'm not just talking about the most serious suicide, terrorist bomb attacks and attacks on planes and the like, which many have been disrupted, and we've had many people imprisoned as a result of it, and they're in prison now. But also attacks such as we saw in France on synagogues and on individual members of the Jewish community. And indeed, not just on that, but on other sectarian groups within the United Kingdom. So I think that, my confidence is far greater in not in our ability to change the mindset. I don't really know how you do that, but in our ability to use intelligence to combat it.
But it seems that it's only getting even worse than worse, because we're watching the years gone by. And if at the beginning we were talking about Al-Qaeda, and we were talking about Osama bin Laden, and we were talking about a certain Sunni extreme wing or extreme military or extreme terror organization, now we're talking about even that the Muslim world is fighting into itself, and there are fightings between Shia and Sunni, and we're seeing something that is even worse than Al-Qaeda. We're seeing the ISIS, and we're seeing the ISIL, and we're seeing the fightings in Syria, and we're seeing what is happening, even small things that are happening in the Gaza Strip. And it seems that the world either couldn't cope with Al-Qaeda and try to finish with the ideas or the military in a military way, or either the world is not understanding how severe this threat is to the West and to any democratic country.
I would say that the threat and this current wave of activity will last for a certain amount of time, and then it will eventually burn itself out one way or the other, and that might be in years or decades to come. But meanwhile, in my opinion, the most important thing is that we strike it and attack it wherever it raises its head in a way that will threaten ourselves. And of course, you know, Israel itself is under threat from jihadism across the borders, and you know the IS, as they call themselves now, the Islamic State, is closing in towards Jordan even, and I know have Jordan in their sights. In the United Kingdom, there are more Muslim youths joining the fight in Syria than there are joining the British Army today. And the big risk there is not so much that they're going to attack us from Syria, but they will survive that fight and come home and carry out attacks back home. So I think that the kind of policy that we must implement is to heighten our intelligence on these individuals, and also to strike them where we can overseas. And I think the American record of drone strike, for example, in the Pakistan border area, which has severely disrupted Al-Qaeda, is a very good pattern and needs to be followed elsewhere as well, as it is to an extent in Yemen.
Yes, Danny?
Yeah, first of all, that is true. Your description of what's happening in the Muslim world is correct. And since this is a global village, all this resonates in Western countries where there are large Muslim communities like the United Kingdom and France. But there is a difference between what you're saying, which is correct, about using intelligence against the extremists, and what happened in Paris 2 days ago. These are not activists. These are not jihadist fighters. These are people who live in Paris and around Paris, and you know, they have their heads filled with all sorts of stuff that comes around either from their imams or from Al Jazeera or from I don't know what. And what you saw there is it all began with a large demonstration, which, like it or not, is not an illegitimate thing to do against Israeli intervention in Gaza, etc., which is okay. It then degenerated, when they dispersed, into not so small, but still much smaller groups than the demonstration of thousands, who went to Jewish shops, to the synagogue, and really became ugly with slogans to kill the Jews, to where is Hitler, etc. These things are completely out of control, and completely unacceptable in the view of the French.
Well, before we will move to the practical way, how you fought this on the ground, and how do you actually fight this, or how the military can fight it in the Gaza Strip, I just want to move again to our I-24 News correspondent, Eli Ochenberg, who is standing right now in Ashkelon, where we just heard more sirens and another rocket firing towards the city. Eli?
Yes, well, Lucy, another red siren alert went off here a couple of minutes ago. Another one in an endless row of red sirens that the Ashkelon residents heard today, and generally in the last 8 days. It wasn't easy on them, and you have to understand, even though you are getting used to this reality at some point, every time there is a red siren alert, it's shaking you completely. And right behind me was a direct hit only a couple of hours ago, and we have several families with shattered homes, and the people here in the neighborhood are very shaken. It's not easy, and we keep on hearing more siren alerts, more salvo of rockets from the Gaza Strip, but every time it happens, Israelis are really shaken by it. It's not easy, and furthermore, there is great confusion at the moment, because they woke up this morning to a reality where a ceasefire is a very reasonable possibility, but now they're talking about further escalation. No one knows how will it exactly look like. So great frustration alongside with great confusion. Not an easy night for Israeli, especially the southern residents, and we will of course keep you updated, but really very tense atmosphere down south here today, Lucy.
Yes, of course, with the frustration of the people in Ashkelon, we can totally understand what is happening. Eli Ochenberg, thank you very much. And we're going right now live to our I-24 News correspondent, Shai Ben-Ari, who is standing right now next to the Iron Dome battery in Tel Aviv. Pretty quiet night here in Tel Aviv. And I don't want to just start saying this, because the last time that I said it...
don't jinx it.
Yeah, I'm not jinxing it. Yes, sorry.
Yes, Lucy, don't worry. We're not superstitious here. We're not, that's not fairly common amongst Israelis. But here in Tel Aviv, since that siren that went off earlier, a few hours ago, it has been quiet. We did actually apparently manage to see the rocket that was fired to the south of here. It's pretty interesting that you can actually see the Iron Dome, actually, the projectiles being fired in the direction of those rockets. And it's sort of faint in the background, but you can see it from a long distance. Unfortunately, we did hear damage, reports of damage being done to a school in Rishon LeZion, with the debris apparently falling on the roof there, and damage done to the school. Of course, this time of year and this time of day, no one was at the school, and that is, of course, very fortunate. But just a reminder that even when these interceptions are successful, there is still a very we're talking about very dangerous situations when under the territory where the interception takes place. There is, of course, debris falling, and this is you can even die from it. We actually witnessed debris falling not far from us a few days ago, and we were able to examine it. It's interesting, but still very dangerous. These are the kinds of situations that are just popping up every day now.
Yes, and this is why we're basically always saying that the civilians who are going out to watch the rockets being intercepted, they should be in a shelter. This is exactly what happened today, getting hit from the debris that you are talking about. This is not less dangerous than the missile itself. Yes, yes, of course, Shai Ben-Ari will continue updating us. So we want to understand how we're going to the military way and we are going underground. How do you start fighting these guerrilla forces? Because you're coming with an army, with an organized army, and you're fighting something else, something totally different.
I've used the word too many times this evening so far, but a huge amount of it boils down to intelligence.
Intelligence.
And when you're fighting an enemy, we're not talking about, of course, an enemy that can be identified in large armoured formations or large groups of soldiers by surveillance away from on the battlefield. We're talking about an enemy that's operating within a civilian community, that's disguising itself among the civilian community. It's not easy to identify.
Well, what happens when getting intelligence is not that easy, like it happens right now in the Gaza Strip? Because we know that it's not that easy like it is in the West Bank.
Well, I think I would take my hat off to Israel's intelligence services, and I think they've done a fantastic job in the Gaza Strip, even though it's very difficult. And I know that many intelligence assets, human assets, are sacrificed in the course of gaining this intelligence. It's a dangerous job. And equally in countries like Afghanistan, which is where my experience is greater, and Iraq, the job of collecting intelligence is, if anything, as difficult or even more difficult than it is here in the Gaza Strip. It's built up over a long period of time, and it means sometimes your initial operations are less successful because you have less of a basis. It depends to a very large extent on the local community and getting in among the local population, winning their confidence to some extent, at least even in certain groups, and getting information via them. That's one of the reasons why eventually General Petraeus was successful in significantly undermining the al-Qaeda campaign in Iraq, and why the current Iraqi government has been less successful in restraining the ISIS and now the IS, because they've abandoned the intelligence gathering techniques that were used.
Daniel, we're trying to understand, when you talk about terror all around the world, and when governments are speaking about terror, you will see everyone saying the same position. Terror should end and we should fight terror. But when it gets to the Middle East, when the Middle East is talking about terror, when the Palestinians are talking about terror, and when Israel is talking about terror, it seems that the world is taking a step back and saying, well, in one way or another, I'm saying the subtext, you're used to this, handle it by yourselves.
Well, first of all, I think the big question is how to define terror, since there for 30 or 40 years international organizations, including the UN, have been debating around an agreed definition of what terror is, and they still haven't succeeded. So being in favor of fighting terror is like being in favor for peace. I haven't encountered anybody who would answer with a no. The question, are you for peace or are you for fighting terrorism? But it's obviously one thing to be sitting in the White House or in the Élysée Palace and to say it, or when you actually live here. So yes, and it's perfectly correct. Intelligence is the big name of the game.
We just say that some sirens right now are heard in Bet Shemesh and in Jerusalem and in Gedera and in Gan Yavne, basically all around the center and the center of Israel.
My uninformed but nevertheless educated guess is that there will be no ground intervention in Gaza.
In Gaza.
So I don't think
Why
that this...
is that?
Because I think that the Prime Minister and the Israeli government and the military, which I must say have been the most restrained and poised.
Accurate.
And poised in their discourse from the beginning, as compared to some of the politicians who have completely lost it. And one of them lost their job today, and Vice Minister of Defense Dani Danon.
Well, the foreign minister just break the unity between Israel and the
minister, the only fight that the foreign minister is fighting right now is against his own prime minister. I don't think he's in any way interested in what is happening in Gaza in his statements. But that's not the issue. What I'm saying is that the prime minister and the government have been very reasonable in their approach, and even today, facing a very difficult choice after Hamas had rejected an offer for a ceasefire and had evidently continued firing heavily against Israel, and despite the fact that the Prime Minister said we will respond with fire, he still continued to say that we will not neglect the diplomatic ways to reach our goals. And I don't believe that there is any enthusiasm about putting soldiers on the ground in Gaza, and that there is still quite a lot of leeway of other, some of them ground-based means to go after Hamas headquarters and fighters in Gaza.
My biggest question these days is that people stopped listening to one another, especially leaders. It seems that Benjamin Netanyahu is really taking, like you said, a calm position, more, let's say, tolerant and more a wiser position. And on the other hand, we see the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also condemning the rockets, condemning the kidnapping of the 3 boys that 20 days ago.
And condemning Hamas.
Condemning Hamas, but it seems that the leaders are not listening to one another. They're basically crying for help. They're saying, okay, we want to reach a diplomatic solution, but they're not actually listening to what they are saying.
Well, because truth be said, Mahmoud Abbas can't deliver a diplomatic solution of this crisis. He can and should be involved in it, if you ask me, Because the one link that I'm missing in the Prime Minister's approach is bringing Mahmoud Abbas back into the game, and to differentiating him.
Although we know that Mahmoud Abbas is going to Egypt tonight,
I know.
Basically this is the statement that's saying again that here
Hamas,
I'm trying to do something about the current situation.
There's always a point in parallel, fighting Hamas and renewing the dialogue with those of the Palestinians who still believe that a dialogue is a means of resolving our conflict, and they are led by Mahmoud Abbas, like it or not.
You know, we're always talking about the military and diplomacy going hand in hand in Israel and not being separated by one another. We're watching always the Chief of Staff and the Defense Minister and the Prime Minister are always going and giving a statement, the three of them at the same time. How much the diplomatic is intervening outside in the military work? How much maybe it's doing some damage on the ground in one way or another to a certain operation that the army is going and conducting on the ground?
I would say in this situation, the entire operation is completely dominated by the political and diplomatic concerns, and quite rightly too. The military will obviously be carrying out their part of the job, which is actually hitting the terrorists, collecting intelligence and so on. But they must, in this situation, perhaps more than in almost any other conflict that I'm aware of, must be working to a very strict diplomatic and political control. This is not a conflict that will be resolved, in my view, by just military force alone. It will have to ultimately have a political diplomatic solution, and therefore it's essential that the two should work so closely together.
Yes, so let's, you've been here, and of course you heard a lot Iron Dome. A lot these days. So in the last week, like I said, two words were on every Israeli's lips: Iron Dome. It's been hailed as the most advanced missile defense system yet, and it's what has allowed Israelis to live a somewhat calm life under rocket fire. The result, many have gone to see it up close. A report by Flo Situk.
In these days of conflict, many Israelis have found unlikely places to visit. Batteries of the Iron Dome, the Israeli anti-missile defense system.
We came because of my little nephew, who is a tourist, and we came to see the Iron Dome. Today it was a little quiet, so we could get out for a little bit. At the moment, it's not clear at all. We're afraid at home, yes.
Ashkelon, located around 10 kilometers north of the Gaza Strip, has been under heavy rocket fire for over a week. Young Dor Shalom, whose name literally means generation of peace in Hebrew, has been living with the loud explosions and came to be reassured.
When you come here, you can see that there is something else that protects you, besides God in the heavens, so it reassures you and gives you courage.
Many people also come to support the soldiers. Yossi set up everything for a barbecue.
Look, I came up with all my gear, kebabs, chicken. At home, we have barbecues for any occasion, to celebrate the good times. So I wanted to do this so the soldiers feel at home in these difficult days.
This is the second afternoon that Safrir has come to watch the anti-missile battery in action. An inhabitant of Yad Mordechai, a neighboring kibbutz, he came ready with his equipment.
I've already managed to get one shot of the Iron Dome firing, but all I had was the smoke trail. I would really like to capture the exact moment the missile leaves the barrel. We live in a difficult period for people who live on this side of the border, as for the others. Because I love photography and I've already retired from reserve duty, I try to capture images that illustrate that atmosphere.
8 o'clock, showtime. Got some popcorn, some cola. Want to drink something?
There was no show tonight for Tzafrir and other visitors. Ashkelon has a few quiet hours. Further to the south, rockets fired from Gaza rain down. Over Dimona and Beersheva, other anti-missile batteries take over, and people keep on coming to see for themselves their promise of protection, hoping to catch a glimpse of a missile taking flight.
things that you can see only in Israel, right, Richard?
Well, I wouldn't say only in Israel. I mean, I've certainly experienced equally bizarre scenes in places like Afghanistan and in Northern Ireland, where again, you know, you can be, you're thinking you're right on the edge there. You've got your weapon in your hand. You're waiting for the enemy to come, and some old lady comes along with a pot of tea for you, in the middle of what you think is a firefight. So yeah, I think it's one of the bizarre aspects of conflict, probably everywhere.
But, you know, this system, Iron Dome, is basically what is going to put Israel maybe in the military way, just in front of any other country.
We're there already.
Lucy,
we are there already.
Yeah, I know that we're there already.
We're I think, number 3 or number 4 in military sales. And of course, there's reason to be proud, but I wish we could have put all this genius into some less destructive
maybe we should
hardware.
Put these genius minds in the political arena, and maybe they can solve and put an diplomatic iron
because
dome.
If you put the people from the political arena into the research, then we'll probably be in trouble.
Probably, yeah, we'll all be in trouble. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this. And we're going out for a small break, 2-minute break, and then we will be back. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to this special edition of I-24 News. We continue our special coverage of the recent escalation and developments between Israel and Hamas and the Gaza Strip. And with me right now is Dr. Zvi Barel, Middle East analyst for Haaretz Daily newspaper. Good evening.
Good evening.
So it's the 7th day, and we've been seeing Israel going one step, and we've been talking a lot about the diplomatic efforts.
Right.
Should Israel do it or shouldn't it? And Israel done it, went to a ceasefire, but the other side is not listening to anything, basically, or just showing some muscles.
Well, we have to look into the text of what was offered to Hamas and what was offered in general. From an Israeli point of view, this was quite acceptable. I mean, the Egyptian, let's say, proposal said initially that we are going to have quiet or peace for peace, or quiet for quiet. And this is what Israel was claiming all the way. Now, Hamas wanted to have some achievement. Hamas couldn't come out to its own public and say, well, we are back in the same square as we started. This cannot be done from a point of view of Hamas. However, Hamas is in no position right now to dictate to anybody, neither to the Egyptians nor to the Israelis, what should be accepted and what should not. And Hamas is trying now to use its own weapons in order to change something in the phrasing of the Egyptian proposal, in order to have something to hold on to.
When we yesterday heard Ismail Haniyeh giving his speech, can we say that it was a victory speech, or was it? Okay, I'm trying to give you.
It was a political speech claiming essentially that Hamas is ready for the armed struggle. However, Hamas is also ready for the political solution, for the diplomatic solution. But he counted what would be the conditions for Hamas acceptance of the Egyptian proposal, meaning opening the gates, or Rafah gate, opening or relieving Gaza from the siege, which is on it since 7 years, having the Palestinians being able to move backwards and forwards to Gaza Strip, and all this kind of humanitarian demands that Hamas thinks is part and parcel of a ceasefire. Israel doesn't accept it. Israel, since 7 years, is imposing this kind of siege on Gaza without caving into any kind of pressure, be it from the United States or from Turkey or from Egypt at the time, because Israel considers Gaza Strip to be a kind of an enclave of terror, and Israel doesn't see the 1.8 million people who are living civilians who are living there, and Israel still wants to establish or to create some kind of an I would say, a protest by the population against Hamas. It didn't work, it doesn't work, and probably it won't work.
If we're looking right now at maybe the three main things that demands that Hamas is putting on the table is, first of all, to open the Rafah border, second of all, to pay the salaries for Hamas, and the third one is to release prisoners. Can Israel answer one of these demands, at least?
Israel can answer all the demands if it wishes, because Israel holds all the cards right now, and Egypt holds part of the cards.
Which is the Rafah border.
The Rafah border, of course. And we will talk about the Rafah border probably a little later, but right now Israel is able to release the prisoners, to let the Palestinian Authority pay the salaries, because Israel was the one to hinder this kind of payment. Qatar was kind of donating $20 million per month in order to pay these salaries, but Israel blocked this kind of payments by telling the Palestinian banks, if you are paying these salaries, you will have trouble not only with us, but with the international law. So the banks were frightened. They don't want to be damaged financially and internationally. So Israel can do that too. Israel can, from its side, open the Rafah gate. However, Israel wants also to gain something. And right now, the Prime Minister and the government are in a very awkward position, because on one hand, they have accepted the ceasefire. On the other hand, they still consider the Gaza as a terror nest that should be
and on the third side, we still see rockets fired from the Gaza Strip on Israel. So how do you know, I'm trying to understand this current situation, and I'm trying to understand how Mahmoud Abbas is going to get out of this, how Mahmoud Abbas is going to, at the end of the day, at the end of this whole operation, is he going to be stronger? Because if he actually completed the demands of Israel, if he didn't pass the salaries, if he condemned Hamas, if he condemned the rockets, if he condemned the kidnapping, at the end of the day, in front of his people and in front of the Palestinians, let's put the word out there, he's in one way or another in a Palestinian war cooperating with Israel.
Well, I think that we have to look into Mahmoud Abbas from a Palestinian point of view. And I think right now what we are seeing is a wave of criticism against Hamas, not only by Palestinians in the West Bank, but also in Gaza. As far as I have read, there is a survey done by the Washington Institute that tells us that Hamas, which has been conducted in Gaza as well, that at least more than 50% are against Hamas, against its behavior right now in this crisis. But nevertheless, what Mahmoud Abbas is doing, he is listening to what the people are telling him. He is not just initiating a new wave of criticism against Hamas, because people were anxious to get rid, not of Hamas, but to get rid of the situation in Gaza. And right now what they feel is that Hamas had entangled them further, deeper, with this kind of crisis. To a certain extent, I would compare what Hamas is doing, or the approach towards Hamas, to the approach towards Hezbollah by the Lebanese at the time of the 2006 war, meaning Hezbollah had entangled and complicated the situation of Lebanon for no reason, according to what the Lebanese had seen. Likewise, Hamas has now been kind of pulled into a war that, to tell the truth, Hamas didn't want it, and Israel didn't want this war. But right now we are in a war. And Mahmoud Abbas, you are raising a very important point. I think that a major mistake which was conducted by Israel is not to talk to Mahmoud Abbas during this whole crisis. Meaning, you are talking to Egypt, you are talking indirectly to Hamas, you are not talking at all to Mahmoud Abbas.
And again, you're putting Mahmoud Abbas in a really, really weak point when basically the job is to only make him stronger, just like put but it's just a small point in this current conversation. And we want to see what is happening with Hamas in a small, just a small video that we did while Hamas and Islamic Jihad officials underway dismissed a ceasefire, calling it not worth the ink it is written with. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas welcomed the initiative, but nobody's listening to what he's saying, unfortunately. I-24 News reporter Uli Shapiro has more.
Caught between a rock and a hard place, this could well describe the Hamas position today, as the group finds itself in a crucial junction after Egypt proposed a truce Monday night. If Hamas accepts the proposal, its supporters may see it as a heavy defeat, since many of its demands remain unfulfilled. But if Hamas does not agree to the truce, the Israeli offensive will continue and may even widen into a ground operation, a major threat to the Palestinians in Gaza.
I would like to make a request to Hamas, everyone, not just me, that they target Israeli arsenal, their Ashdod port, Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Eilat, these ports that bring in weapons, and their airports, that they hit them directly and painfully, so that children's blood does not go to waste.
The ceasefire offer was presented to the two sides by Egypt on Monday night. On Tuesday morning, the Israeli Security Cabinet accepted it.
If the rocket fire nevertheless continues, if Hamas rejects the Egyptian proposal, we of course are ready to continue our operation, to intensify operation as need be, to protect our citizens.
But Hamas officials say they never received the proposal and only heard about it via the media.
These suggestions have no value because they were not proposed to the movement and nobody discussed it with the movement beforehand. To end the fighting before reaching the conditions of the resistance, we refuse this. We will not stop fighting before they accept all the conditions of the Palestinian resistance.
Now, as international pressure peaks to new levels, Hamas, which only a few weeks ago formed a unity government with the Fatah party of President Mahmoud Abbas, has to decide on its next step. None of the options seems appealing to the Islamic organization right now. But perhaps from this low point, Hamas can once again regain its power and prepare for the next battle.
And joining us also to the conversation, Mr. Danny Ayalon. Welcome back. Good to have you. We were just talking, you know, there is something frustrating in this whole current situation because we were always talking about the Palestinian side and Hamas and everything, but I'm seeing the moves and the steps that Israel is doing. We are watching that Israel is basically preventing itself from getting to a certain understanding with Mahmoud Abbas. It's catching the hands of Mahmoud Abbas and telling him, okay, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this, you cannot do this. So at the end of the day, we know that whomever going to lose from this game is Mahmoud Abbas, and we're going to see even more, let's say, terror cells going to get even bigger in the West Bank, which Israel doesn't need right now. So how come nobody is, you know what, I'm going to put it on the table, how come nobody's thinking in this government?
Well, that's a good question. Lucy, we analyzed here the Israeli cabinet and Mr. Netanyahu himself. You yourself talked about how hesitant he is. I would call him a reluctant warrior. I don't think he wants to go into Gaza. He accepted the ceasefire offer of Sisi this morning at 9 o'clock. It was the Hamas who didn't accept it, which I don't know. I mean, I know why, but I think they made a mistake. Now, as far as Abu Mazen, I think Mahmoud Abbas may become the winner. I think this is our interest, for him to become the winner, in the sense that he should be the one that would take over Gaza. It's not going to be overnight, but the fact that Hamas will be further diminished in terms of his military capabilities, I think politically also they made a mistake. I think if Egypt, maybe with Saudi Arabia. Qatar, I'm not sure. With the Qataris, you cannot really rely on them, unfortunately, because they are playing everybody. You know, they are hedging. They are playing with the
Iran
and with Iran, with Daesh, and with everyone. Yes. But I think if Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Israel would help Abu Mazen, I think he can become the stronger political figure in the Palestinian camp. I know that according to the Palestinians, they should have an election in about 6 months. And maybe that could be an opening for a political track after these elections.
Well, I think the most important word in all this is the if. The if really hints to a kind of a wishful thinking, because first we have to see whom are we dealing with, not on the Palestinian side, on the Israeli side. What kind of a government do we have right now? The kind of the government that didn't want to proceed with the peace negotiations. The kind of the government that really was afraid that Mahmoud Abbas would come with some kind of suggestion which would be acceptable and they wouldn't be able to say no. I mean, we are dealing with a government that understands how to fight Hamas, understands how to make a ceasefire agreement with an organization but not with the state, which prefers an agreement with a militia that doesn't demand anything in political terms, meaning that Israel doesn't have to withdraw, Israel doesn't have to give up settlements in order to receive this ceasefire, on a partner that wants to have a real peace treaty, but which means that this government will have to pay a lot in terms of political and settlement.
You know, everybody's talking about the recent peace process that two, let's say, representatives got into a room and started drawing maps and saying, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there, you're going to take this. Can you do that, actually? Can you do that, get into a room and start drawing maps and talking about maps when the differences are so big between the two sides?
Lucy, I would say, as a veteran of many, many negotiations, I think the secret would be with starting from the end. If in a very, very quiet way, you know, because everybody has their own political concerns and pressure from inside. Abu Mazen on the one hand, Bibi Netanyahu on the other end. But if, and again, they don't have the trust, mutual trust, unfortunately, but if in an ideal world there would be two leaders, Palestinian and Israeli, that has some trust, they would meet together, tete-a-tete, four eyes, without any advisors, and they would agree on what is the last stage. The last stage could be either long-term interim, if they cannot reach an agreement on all the hard issues of refugees in Jerusalem, or agree on whatever they can agree on. Let's say, base 67 borders with swaps, and the Palestinians' recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. I think if they start with this, and go back, everything else would fall into place. Again, I do not see yet the leadership, and I don't see yet the vision and the courage and the wisdom on either side.
Yeah, but the point is that you start with putting two mines, huge mines, and say, well, let's see how you cross this minefield. I mean, recognizing the Jewish state is a landmine which cannot be crossed right now.
Also, 67 borders for Israel is a landmine. So it's a landmine for a landmine. They will neutralize each other.
Yeah, well, this is also a way to address the issue.
I'm trying to, you know, I've been talking about it, and I've been thinking about it all day, just from this beginning of this broadcast. Mahmoud Abbas is trying to call for help. Mahmoud Abbas is condemning the Hamas. Mahmoud Abbas is condemning the act of the kidnapping. Mahmoud Abbas is doing what Israel is telling him to do by stopping and not paying the salaries, like you just said. Mahmoud Abbas is condemning the rocket firing. How come Israel is not seeing what Mahmoud Abbas is doing and getting up once and for all and saying, okay, and stop hearing from the government that there is no partner on the other side and you cannot speak with him when he's basically doing whatever Israel is asking him to do?
Lucy, I was very critical of Mahmoud Abbas because of his political warfare against Israel. He was the head of the delegitimization and other things that I do not agree, and I think we have to confront him. But I think he has vindicated himself. He has proven himself as a real leader who really means what he says. After the kidnapping and the murder of the three Israeli teenagers, after his criticizing of Hamas and calling for a ceasefire, I think he has proven himself, and I think he should get more credit from the Israeli leadership. Maybe, and I'm giving them now a little bit of slack, is that right now they're dealing, you know, they're under fire and they're dealing with the Hamas. But after this operation is over, I think they should be rethinking in the Israeli government how to bring back Abbas in certain terms. Now, we said in 6 months maybe there will be elections in the Palestinian Authority. I'm not sure that in 6 months there will not be elections here in Israel, because you see, this is the first time that we see that under a military operation, senior Israeli members of the cabinet, including the foreign minister, are talking against the government. This is something which is unseen. Our foreign minister, instead of...
Netanyahu was criticizing the government several times when he was not in the government.
But then he resigned. You know, before the disengagement, he criticized until he resigned.
But these are different characters which are running now. And
that's the problem. That's the problem.
That once there are elections in Israel, you'll find your friend Lieberman as a prime minister, because this is the spirit of the country. It's not just the spirit
really
of the government.
It's a spike now, but in the long run, I think everybody realizing that Lieberman is doing everything in a very cynical way out of populism. And in the long run,
doesn't?
Well, I don't think that Bibi does now. I think Bibi has been quite responsible. Bogi Ya'alon was quite responsible in the latest campaign.
We shouldn't be impressed by being responsible right now, because everybody is playing his own cards. I mean, right now it plays right to be seen as a responsible person, which is okay. I'm not criticizing it. On the contrary, but as to Mahmoud Abbas, I mean, I understand your rage, but. You know, he is a partner for running daily business. He is a partner to coordinate with Israel. He is not a partner in the eyes of the Israeli government for a peace treaty, because the peace treaty itself is not a partner of the Israeli government. Israel doesn't want to have a peace treaty under the conditions that Mahmoud Abbas wants them. And this is why we have to separate between what he behaves like, or the term card that he is getting, and what the government is ready to do with him.
So, Lucy, this is why we have real statesmen should have a plan B. If you cannot reach an ideal deal, get the second best. And the second best, short of a perfect deal, would be a long-term interim.
But you have to find further statesmen. Otherwise you are left with a deal.
So maybe if Lucy and I will run, I'm sure you will find a statesman.
You're running for the government of Israel.
Absolutely, I would love you to run.
For now, I'm just here.
I know.
I need to...
For now, you mean?
No. I don't want to get into the political business. Believe me, just to be in the media, it's complicated enough. I don't want to even start imagining what is happening.
You're doing a good job. You're fine.
When you're going to the political arena. But you were talking about the public point of view.
Right.
You were talking about the public opinion, and what is happening is that what Mahmoud Abbas is saying is affecting the Palestinians, that in this round, you are saying that the Palestinians understand what Hamas is doing and understands that Hamas is going basically against them and not in favor. So they are hearing from the leadership what the leader is saying. What we are seeing in the Israeli point of view and the Israeli public is that everything is going to the extreme. There is a certain, let's say, kosher signature to go and to not accept anyone who is not with the majority point of view, because the majority point of view right now is against the Palestinians, against Hamas, hit them hard, just finish them, and that's it. If you're going to make a small different point of view, you're going to be slammed all over, and people are going to call you that you're a fascist or you're hating Israel. And the conversation in Israel started to be really extreme, and in one way or another it got to do with the government, because the ministers are giving a green light to this kind of thinking.
I agree. As I say again, during the operation, it's unprecedented that members of the government would turn against the government and not be fired. Well, today I think the Prime Minister did the right thing by firing the Deputy Minister of Defense. And hopefully this will kind of put some things in order. But I think, again, if we look at this particular point in time, it will be, I think, inconsequential to judge because, during fire, always there is, in every country, there is moving to the right, more patriotic, more nationalistic. So we'll have to let the fire subside once it finishes, once we have an agreement or some sort of settlement in Gaza, then I think we will have to go back into the political track.
And, the recent, we're getting like reports that 53% of the citizens of Israel are against a ceasefire. So,
I wish I could agree.
Hamas did not agree to it. If Hamas,
I wish I could agree with Mr. Elon, but the point is that this government and this Knesset, in fact, started to put the infrastructure for this kind of right-wing and extreme right-wing feelings and atmosphere long ago, long before this operation, long before this fire. I mean, all these laws, or the racial laws which were accepted, and all the amendments to the basic laws, and all this kind of declarations during the last 3 years have created an infrastructure for the people to understand that thinking like this is okay, that this is the bon ton right now. This is the
you said a sentence, Mr. Ayalon, that you said in crisis times, in a time of crisis, people are going right, being more patriotic. To be right is to be more patriotic. When you're left, you're not patriotic anymore?
Sure. Well, this is the perception. I'm not saying this is true, but you know how it is. In politics, a lot, like in the media, more perception than realities. Unfortunately, perceptions make realities. And this is the perception. It's not true. I believe that you can be very patriotic from the left, whether you're from Meretz or certainly Labor. But again, the perception is, and I'm sure even voters of Meretz and Labor today under fire would turn to the right. Until
and you're hearing opposition leaders are saying that they are against
you can see even parties like Meretz becoming more to the center, if not to the right. You can say that even people who are normally considered as leftists are now trying to be at the consensus, as a general consensus. I mean, this would have been natural under what we know that is people behave under fire. However, it is well rooted long before this crisis, and I'm afraid that we are not going to get rid of it once this crisis is over. I think that we are going to become more and more right-wingers than we should be, in fact.
I would say it depends. It depends, because if there would be some offer, if we would see some rhetoric from the Palestinian side, which would be more amenable to Israeli ears, everything can change. You know that. Everything can change.
This is something that Benjamin Netanyahu maybe don't understand, that we are always saying, and I said it to him, and I asked him this question when I met him, when we did an interview with him. I told him maybe the Prime Minister forgot the fact that the citizens of Israel will accept a peace treaty only from the right wing, and now not from the left wing, because the majority is going to the right, and they will, and the chance is in your hands. And it seems that the government itself doesn't even understand it. Benjamin Netanyahu, who wants to be in the history books, doesn't understand this.
Who did the major peace deal in the region? Was Menachem Begin from the right.
With, Egypt.
But here I want to say something to Tzvi. You see, even Meretz people, it's amazing. The closer you are to the fire, even if you're a Meretz member, and I don't know if you had a chance to listen to some kibbutzim members which are in the Kerem Shalom area. So you have members of Labor and members of Meretz who say, get rid of Hamas because they are under fire. Right. So the closer you are under fire, you really become more to the right.
This is true, but now, when you don't have a crisis, these people are the first ones to go and help the Gazans.
Which is fine. No, absolutely, and I respect that. On the other hand, the syndrome, or I would say the example of Sadat. When Sadat came over here, all of Israel fell in love with him, and that allowed Begin to make all these concessions. So I'm saying, if Mahmoud Abbas, let's say, after the elections in the Palestinian camp, would come to Jerusalem, or will invite whoever is the Prime Minister of Israel to Ramallah, and will talk in something which will be nice or which will be pleasant to the Israeli ears, you will see majority will be for concessions.
Yeah, the majority may be, but the government may not.
I will invite you to tomorrow. Now, promise that I'll let you answer tomorrow. Gentlemen, thank you very much for this.
Thank you for having us.
We are finishing our special broadcast, of course, tomorrow. We will be here with a special edition. Good night.